You are listening to PowerScore's Featured Law Schools podcast series. Today's featured law school is the University of Iowa College of Law. Currently ranked number 26 by the U.S. News & World Report, Iowa Law has a total full-time enrollment of 590 students and currently costs a little over $21,000 for students who are in-state and over $39,000 for out-of-state students. For the class that entered in 2009 from about 1,300 applicants, about 45% were accepted. Finally, when it came to the admission for the fall of 2009, the median LSAT score was a 161, while the median GPA was a 3.61. Representing Iowa Law on our podcast today is the Dean of the Law School, Collins Byrd, and current third-year student, Mosa Fernandez Goodman. Dean Byrd says that his alumni have the best idea of what makes their school different.
I firmly believe that unless you've either worked at or attended another law school within the past 5 years, we're clueless as to what makes us different from another law school because we've never worked at another law school. But it's been at least 5 years since I've been here. So what I like to do is focus on alums. And here's what the alums say. The number one thing that they mentioned is the student-faculty interaction and the ease by which you can do that. We have an environment here which is known to be rather civil to itself and civil to each other. And I think student-faculty interaction is one indication of that. The alums say that it's very easy to get to know faculty early on, and so they enjoy that. Second thing, which may or may not differentiate us from some schools, is national reputation. We are a school that allows students to pretty much go anywhere they want to go across the nation in terms of practicing law. And that national reputation is centered a lot on our career services. Now, granted, 65% of our students will end up being placed in the middle 1,000 miles of the United States. But the other 35% end up on the East Coast, West Coast, North, South, etc. So national reputation would probably be set. The third one, it may be a bit of a surprise to some folks. It's location. The people who graduate from here say they really enjoyed going to law school in Iowa City. It isn't necessarily a place where they wanted to practice law, but they really enjoyed their 3 years of going to law school here because it was a nice, clean, safe place to study law and to go to school. And there were things to do as well socially when you had time to do them. So I would say that location is probably third. Fourth would be cost. The average debt load of our graduates is about $20,000 less than the national average for all law school graduates. So the low debt amount is very enticing to people, especially with the economic situation being what it has been over the past 2 or 3 years. And then the final two things are somewhat related. We are one of the smaller law schools in the United States. We have an entering class of 200, which may be the second smallest in the Big Ten, and certainly the smallest among the schools that we overlap with. And that leads to just an easier opportunity and a better opportunity to get to know people. Again, it gets back to that civility issue, which is my very last comment. It all comes back to civility. The fact that there just aren't as many students here allows people to get to know each other very well, and you gain a sense of mutual respect for each other by doing that. So when I talk to alums, those are the things. Student-faculty interaction, national reputation, location, cost, relatively low cost, small class size, and civility.
And though Iowa is a selective law school, Dean Byrd wants applicants to know that all aspects of the application are important. Don't just focus all your attention on the LSAT and lose sight of your academics. Also, make sure your personal statement stands out.
The first thing I would say is do very well academically. We are a school that when we evaluate applications, we are holistic in our process. We look at everything, and we give everything serious consideration, from the LSAT and the GPA to the writing sample on the LSAT, the personal statement, letters of recommendation, the resume. We look at everything. But don't mistake that for being able to do poorly academically, but yet being able to get in or be offered admission or do well in law school simply based on a nice personality or being a leader in everything and being involved in a lot of activities. You have to show that you can do the work academically. Second is write a good personal statement. There are a lot of people who are applying to University of Iowa Law School who have good LSATs and GPAs, and it's not too hard to find those people. But what is difficult for us to do is find people who are good people to go along with those good numbers. And so they need to write a good personal statement and focus on that, because that is the one opportunity where they can tell us what they really want us to know about them. And it comes unfiltered. It comes from the applicant directly to us. So writing a good personal statement is really, really important.
When thinking of ways Iowa stands out from the crowd, Dean Bird says the national reputation of Iowa speaks for itself. The academic and non-academic aspects of the school make it stand out from the rest.
I'd say from a non-academic standpoint, just the overall national reputation of the institution. The fact that if you come here, you can pretty much call your shots in terms of where you're going to go in terms of your career, geographically. National reputation. The second one, the second and third, I'll say the second one, but there are a few things involved in it. It's more academic in nature. If you take a look at our clinics, our research institutes, and our scholarly publications, and the subject matter that's covered by those areas, that's what really, I think, may set us apart, depending on, as you said, depending on the other school that you're looking at. We have clinics that cover all kinds of different subjects like immigration law, tax law, criminal law, juvenile law, family law. We have research institutes in healthcare policy, disabilities, public affairs, public interest, international finance and development, human rights. We have scholarly publications in corporate law, civil rights, constitutional law, and international law. If you take a look at our clinics, our research institutes, and our scholarly publications and the subject matter that's covered by those areas, you'll see that we have some really interesting programs and some professors who've done a lot of research, in-depth research in those areas, and the students have the opportunity to get involved in those areas and do their own research and writing in those areas. So those are two things. I think it's the national reputation of the institution, which allows for a very broad career services opportunity in terms of where you go geographically, but also the clinics, research institutes, and scholarly publications that we have here at the school.
And though Dean Bird has great advice for potential Iowa law school students, a current third year, Mosa Fernandez-Goodman, has a different perspective, a student perspective, and he says the environment is what makes his school exceptional.
It really is the environment. I think, the way I perceive it as a former applicant and now a current student, soon to be alum, is there's sort of different stratospheres that the schools are working in based on their ranking, essentially, and reputation. So Iowa is not a Harvard in every way, but we are, if you use that as a model, or Yale. We excel at a lot of things. So we're sort of one of the top law schools in many ways. But what I think, based on my conversation, and it's somewhat experiential because I went to a lot of schools, but it's also visited a lot of schools, but it's also anecdotal and speaking to friends at other campuses, that the environment in Iowa is really healthy, and it fosters the ability for you to really, either say, okay, I really want to practice law, or as in my case, pursue a dual degree, but the support is there within the law school to help you sort of customize the curriculum, meet with alumni, get access to professors who understand that it's not the sole purpose of Iowa law to produce corporate lawyers. It's not the sole purpose of Iowa law to produce public interest attorneys. So I guess all-encompassing, I guess it's the environment that is created. It's not cocky. It's not pretentious, but at the same time, Iowa does a good job of recognizing that, it is a highly prestigious law school, but it doesn't have any airs about it, So it's sort of like it's got the tools to be that competitive East Coast or West Coast law school, but sort of with what is typically called the Midwestern values.
Mosa also says the variety of opportunities from football tailgates to a great educational reputation is what makes Iowa law different and unique.
So what Iowa has is it has a really sort of diverse, especially for the Midwest, right? We're in the middle of cornfields. There are people from all around the country, but also all around the world coming together to learn law. But we have tailgates, and we have, obviously they're cliques, just as in any social grouping, but we really do have a good sense of community. People, aren't cliquey to the point where it feels like high school, which is a critique, I think, of a lot of law schools. And I think this sort of ties into the healthy environment, right? The healthy environment being what I was talking about earlier as far as the school as a whole and reputation is concerned, trickles down to the students because, we are one of the major reasons why the school is in existence, to serve future lawyers. So we really need to sort of embody what the school is trying to achieve. And I think that there's a really good sense of collegiality, but we're not carrying, people always talk about schools where it's ultra competitive. People at Iowa want to do well. They know that if their GPA is higher than their classmates, they are more likely to have the job opportunities that they want. They get a better sense of accomplishment. But it's not to the expense of another student, I guess, which is what I've heard goes on at other law schools. And I can see, law schools very much type A driven, so I can see that being true, and I haven't found that to be the case at Iowa.
Finally, when asked what he would say to a student who is trying to decide on Iowa law, lots of things came to his mind.
For me, you sort of look at when I was applying to law schools, you look at the cost, you look at the reputation, the environment, and the job opportunities, right? Those sort of four factors. And however you rate each of those, for me, job opportunities was towards the top, right? It just turns out that the environment is really good. The legal market now is somewhat shot, so job opportunities are less than they were 3 years ago everywhere. But if you look at those different areas and say, where did Iowa come out, and it's high, then I think you should go to it. I think Iowa does here's where I think Iowa falls short, is it's almost too modest. And I know that sounds like a cop-out sort of way to approach it, but really look at the value that you're getting for what you're spending. Iowa's inexpensive to attend relative to other schools, especially elite schools. They're often very generous with financial aid. It's a Big Ten environment, which if you're coming from a big school as an undergrad, you probably are appreciative of. Or if you're coming from a small liberal arts environment or something like that, which I was coming out of, it's a nice compliment. And I think it's it's an elite law school, so it places people in really good situations and does so in a healthy manner. So I think some combination thereof, you really need to think about it. It's the value that you get out of it. What are you paying for and what are you getting out? Iowa, for many, stacks up at the top.
Thank you for listening to PowerScore's podcast series. If you want more information on PowerScore's podcasts or services, please visit PowerScore.com or you can call 1-800-545-1750.